But First Baptist Church, if I was to just encapsulate who we are, it's a church that really wants to make an impact with the gospel in Cumming and around the world.
Sure.
Partnering, not that we can all go around the world, but partnering with missionaries around the United States and even around the world. So that's who we are.
Yeah. And I've gotten to be a proponent of that a couple of times. So I think my first one going out into the world was back in high school, late high school, early college. We went down to Puerto Rico, and then I went with Kyle Connell to Slovakia, and then just recently got back a couple of years ago, went out to Thailand, but all through FBC. And so, I mean,
I didn't realize you were on the Thailand trip. That's one that I haven't been to yet that I want to go. The wonderful people there at Pattaya.
Yeah.
And can't say the church name right off.
I don't.
Yan Tim, something like that.
Yeah, it's hard to pronounce, but yeah, that's it.
Every time one of our teams go, and I'm sure the time you went as well, they always send a gift back to the pastor.
They do, yeah.
It is so sweet, and I want to go meet them personally. So you've been a part of that global mission push. And was the Puerto Rico a World Changers trip?
It was.
Yeah.
That was my first mission trip going out there.
Excellent.
And then I kind of snuck in at the very last second for Thailand. So that's probably why you didn't know, because Alexa, my little sister, she is the one that told me about it because she wanted to go because they had separated it. Half went to go speak to children, and the other half went into downtown Pattaya and the red light district and ministered to the women there. And so that's what she wanted to do, is go to that. And she was telling me about it and goes, hey, I'm going to do this, but you should look into it. So about 3 weeks before, I was like, hey, I'm coming too.
Oh, that's great. Sometimes those spontaneous trips are just obviously a God thing, but so special in our lives.
Yeah, very impactful. So this kind of brings us into really the meat of the conversation. And we are just now at Liger helping out another company with their mission, vision, and values and activating it internally. And so that brings us to what we talked about, because I called you the other day and, what are we going to talk about? Right. And so I had an idea of what I thought we might talk about. You had an idea of what we might talk about, and it ended up being the same thing.
It was.
And so that is the mission, the vision, and the values of FBC and what that is. And so can you speak to that a little bit? I know the mission is disciples who make disciples. The vision is the church that gives itself away. And then the values are sovereignty of God, sanctity of life, and significance of local church.
You got it. You nailed it there, Dakota. You sure did. Well, we think what God has called all of us to do. This is not unique to First Baptist Church, so I don't want to position it that way. But we really do believe that our first thing is to make disciples, which means introduce people to Jesus so they can become like Him. That's the disciple process. But we don't want to just stop there. We want to make disciples who, like you, have become a disciple, and then you went to Thailand and Puerto Rico to help others become disciples. So that's where we get that part of our mission, disciples who make disciples. At First Baptist Church, we have different discipleship platforms. Obviously, the teaching on a Sunday or a Wednesday night in the sanctuary is an opportunity to help people understand God's word, God's way, and how we can live more like Christ. Then we have small groups, Bible studies. Some meet on campus on Sunday mornings. Some meet throughout the week. We have some smaller discipleship groups where we have leaders leading groups of men and groups of women to grow in their faith and become disciple makers as well. And years ago, I invited the staff over to the house. We're in my family room, and we knew who we were and what we were called to do. And a question just kind of rose in that conversation. What do we want people to drive by and see our building, which isn't who we are, it's where we go to meet.
Right.
But when they drive by and they see that building, what do we want them to think? And we just brainstormed about that. And I don't actually remember who brought it up, but someone said, well, we want people to say, oh, that's the church where if you need something, you can get it. If you need help, if you need direction, if you need comfort, even physical things if possible. And so out of that grew, we kept brainstorming, and then all of a sudden it was the church that gives itself away. To be honest, I thought that was a little presumptuous. What are people going to think if, we're the church that gives itself away? But then I was reading Philippians chapter 2, a beautiful passage that outlines who Christ is. And it said he was obedient to God even unto death. And I thought, we know that. He gave himself away. And if we're disciples, then we become people who give ourselves away. And while that's a really lofty goal and none of us live up to it like we want to, it had a biblical foundation, and so it helped me feel comfortable about saying, hey, we're going to be known. We want to be known as the church that gives itself away. And we also think in the discipleship process that you can't help someone become a disciple without giving your life away to that person.
Sure.
Giving your time, giving your knowledge, sharing your heart, learning their heart, who they are, and being a part of that heart transformation process. So that kind of grew together. Disciples making disciples by giving themselves away.